Yep, we are recording.
Thank you, thank you. All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen here. So good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for taking some time out of your Friday afternoon before a holiday to join us and talk about disaster preparedness, response, and recovery as part of our Boost program, obviously. So we're here today for you to share your experiences, hear how other Boost communities are preparing for disaster events, discuss some best practices and lessons learned to better prepare for, respond to, and recover from these events. And then to just continue to inform us at ILG and your Boost team on how we can better support you all with future training or peer learning opportunities as we go into the home stretch here of our Boost program. Before we get started, a few Zoom logistics. I know everybody's kind of very, very aware of Zoom at this point, but just a couple of quick things to make sure you mute yourself so we can limit some background noise if you're not talking. We are recording today so that we can share this out with your Boost cohort if they weren't able to join us today. As always, feel free to use the chat box to get help or to ask any questions that you have. And as always, please make sure to rename yourself so that we know which organization you're from. So if you could put your name and your organization, that would be really helpful so that we can know who's on the line with us. So here's your team on the line today. I'm Melissa Keene. I'm program manager with ILG and have worked with you all for the duration of the Boost program. I'm joined today by Carly, Hannah, Kim, and Nicole. Erica is not able to join us today, but the rest of your Boost team is here to support you today. To also get a better idea of who's joining us, if you wouldn't mind just typing your name, title, and organization into the chat box. So we have an idea of, again, who's on the line with us today. We won't make you all go around and do live introductions, but if you could just join that, share that in the chat box, that would be great. So today I'm going to turn this over to Carly to introduce you to our first speaker who has a lot of expertise and lessons learned and probably the good, the bad, and the ugly from the city of Ventura today. So Carly, do you want to introduce our speaker this afternoon?
Absolutely. We're really lucky today to have Daniel Wall here with us. He was selected as the City of Ventura's first emergency services manager, hired in 2019, about a year and a half after the devastating Thomas Fire. Dan has over 30 years of experience in emergency response, which includes time in the U.S. Army, the public health care sector, as well as local government. I could go on and on, I'm sure, about his resume, but I want to save that time so he could speak to us a little bit more about his best practices and lessons learned. So without further ado, please welcome Dan.
Thank you, Carly. Having not been familiar with the ILG, I apologize in advance because I had a lot of questions of Carly. And so hopefully I can continue to join this group and see what you guys are all about. I am the new emergency manager for the city of Ventura. And I say new because I've been on the job and I gave a presentation last night to one of our community-based council groups. And I've been on the job for 370 days, 7 days a week days, not work days. Actually, since COVID, 230 days ago, we've been remote. And so now you can see in the background my house. When I first was applying for the job, I had a 17-year history of working with the public health department in emergency preparedness. And so if you do the math and figure out when I got hired, it was October 21st. Some people would say that was a really smart move on my part. I was previously involved in and responsible for emergency preparedness for the public health department of Ventura County. And so I decided to move, and I moved, and then COVID broke, and I looked back and thought, wow, that was awesome. Strategic on my part. At any rate, came into the city of Ventura. The city council noticed through the Thomas Fire that they had not really accomplished a lot of their improvements, and they needed to have an emergency manager. And so for 2 or 3 years running, they kept calling for this funded position. And so having the experience I have, I applied for the position, came through the door and found that they had an emergency plan, but they did not have any real knowledge or training on the same. And so in my interview, I asked for a few things. I said, I've learned from lessons from other events across the United States about the concept of having a virtual EOC. And in my interview, they said, oh, no, we want to do in-person training. So that's great, but I'm still going to keep my eye on the ball of a virtual EOC. And so fast forward 3 months, 4 months later, and we were entering COVID, and I walked on Microsoft Teams. Our entire EOC is on Microsoft Teams. And so it is actually going to be presented at the Preparedness Summit in April, if we have it in person or virtually, as a best practice. We have 109 people today on our virtual EOC on Microsoft Teams. And if you're familiar with Microsoft Teams, it has all of the planners and all of the all the pieces of an EOC, but they're in a civilian version. And so we've created all the 204, 203, 201, 202 forms, the ICS forms, and we've found their corollary within that planning document, which is on Microsoft. And so the entire COVID event, we have every record of every meeting and every minute and agenda and every email associated with a SharePoint file that's associated with Microsoft Teams. It is really amazing to look back from March 12th, when I walked through the city manager's office and said, we're going to do this virtual EOC and I need to stand up the EOC. And he said, oh, okay. And so here we are today, and everybody is completely on board with filling out their 214 forms, their activity logs, and they're very, very cognizant of ICS compliance. And so it has been one of those things where I walk through the door and ask for a bunch of things and ask about ICS, and they said, what is that? And we've now evolved into a group that is very, very well versed in why, and our reimbursement and all of those, all the documents required through FEMA have gone very successfully so far. And so amongst the things that I did in the interim prior to COVID, all the policies that you would see within a normal entity, health department and or city, didn't exist. And those include fit testing, quick start guides for the EOC, emergency response plan revision, because the last one was written quite a few years ago. Walking into our physical EOC, the televisions still had tubes in them, just to give you an idea of where we are. And so we had a lot of really very, very old school thoughts that were very solid within the city of Ventura. And we had a great reputation, great legacy to it, to kind of step into. And now we're kind of within this century, and we're walking forward. And so most of the people that are still involved in we write an IAP, or incident action plan, every week. And everybody's engaged in that process from the city manager on down. And so it's kind of been a lot of successful kind of stuff. It is, in my mind, a best practice. I know that the Prep Summit folks, they filled it out halfway, and then they contacted me and said, where's the rest of it? And so that's sort of an indicator for me. But it's been a really kind of a rock and roll ride, if you will. Still working from home, probably about 70% of the time. But the nature of an emergency manager is it doesn't really matter where you are. You're going to be putting out 110, 120% for the most part, wherever you're planted. So working from home just allows you to kind of work 12 or 14 hours a day instead of having to drive home. So I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. We've been doing some analysis on our reopening plans, and we've written a bunch of different plans related to kind of repopulation of our city hall. And we've decided that we as a city, and maybe some of you have gotten the same place, we're likely to go with the kind of the Google model. Although it's not politically kind of well received yet, and our city council is still warming up to it, there's a very good possibility that a percentage of our employees will not be coming back to work as it was previously. And so because we've found that we are more connected and more effective when people have the ability to care for their, have that work-life balance and take care of their children, family, dogs, or what have you. And so we actually, we're doing some benchmarking right now and looking at sort of doing time studies to figure out whether we've actually made improvements, because what we've seen in the actual efficiencies created is the costs associated with the office space. As an example, a telephone on a desk in an office costs you about $250 a month to maintain a phone on a desk. And many of you on the screen, if not all of us, understand that a cell phone dutifully replaces that. And if you get an online like Ring Central program that makes all of your phones virtual, the office space is almost obsolete. Although you have to accommodate somehow within your household, in some cases that's not available for some employees. So we're kind of creating, that's the path we're on. we'll see where we end up. We're not planning on repopulating or opening to the public until February or March. And at that point, we will make a decision. And so that is consistent with the County of Ventura's kind of plan at this point. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow with this pandemic, but a lot of, I could just go on and on with all the different policies and different things that I've written and kind of engaged, but I guess I'll leave time for questions. That's me. Carolee, what else do I need to talk about? I can't remember.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for that. Just did want to open it up really quick. Did anyone have any clarifying questions for Dan? I think I see a hand from Ruben.
Yes, well, thanks for that, explanation and kind of the foresight, coincidentally, but operating in the virtual world. Could you describe a little more what you said that weekly, you're doing something weekly with
our incident action plan, if you'd like, I can show you. Let's see, how do I do this? Am I able to share my screen?
Yes, you can share your screen. Mhm.
All right, let me see if let me go to the program first before you see all the other things I'm working on my screen. Sorry. That is a job hazard at some point. So yeah, so we, hold on. So how many of you are familiar with Microsoft Teams? By show of hands.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit. Well, don't worry. I was very new to it, and being really young, as you can tell on your monitor there, it was a quick study. And so let me see here. All right. So you can probably see. Can you now see my Microsoft Teams? And
Yeah.
I'm in files. So let me go to general. Sorry. So let me just kind of, let's see. You can see that now, right?
Yes.
Okay, so here's some of the best shots, which is in Planner. And so when we set up over here, and I don't, can you guys see my cursor up in the upper left?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when we set up all these different files, and we use Microsoft Teams for a lot of project management and a lot of planning and development and different things. Different shops use it a lot. And if you use it within your city, you understand the power of that tool because it's associated and connected completely virtually and all online. So in ICS, there's a requirement to have certain ICS forms, which denote the activities that you're going to undertake in any given operational period. And that evolves into a document called an incident action plan. So you have a 201, 202, 203, 204, 207, which is organizational chart. That document, which I can show you in our IAPs. Let's see. Archive. Oh no, that's down in, sorry. IAPs are found in Plans and Intel. So we create an incident action plan as the culmination of all the decisions and things that we are making. Here's the latest incident action plan for the city of Ventura for the week of, and we've gone to a longer operational period. But basically it generates this document that says who the planning chief is within ICS, the city manager is approving it as the incident commander. And then it says the operational period, which we've now gone to 3 weeks. It lays out all the activities we're going to undertake as a city. So it starts with a history. It lays out all the activities. Now, if you're looking at the screen saying that doesn't look like a classic IAP from the fireside, you're correct, but the same forms have the same data points in them. We just went to a Microsoft version because it's easier in SharePoint. And so all the data and statistics. So it's kind of a culmination document. There's our 207, our org chart. But I can share this document with you guys if you'd like. That's what I think in my mind denotes why it becomes sort of a best practice kind of thing, because it consolidates information very efficiently, and they much more importantly, the staff has full access to it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. An example is in our different sections: finance, PIO, safety. Some of them wanted their own bucket of lists, but these are like the ICS 204 form. And so if you go to command, there's all the different tasks that are needing to be done in any given week and what their status is. And if I go into any one of these, I can tell you what the status is, and I can update the people that are established and assigned to that team. And so it's kind of leveraging it. I think that it is a best practice related to how you run an EOC virtually. And we're going to adopt this across the city philosophically and literally within all of our departments, because you can do time management. Now, let me show you that, because it just becomes really, really important to see what your staff are assigned and how encumbered they are. And so I can look by any statistical variable. Unfortunately, me as the emergency manager, my task list looks really long, but you can look at all of your staff assigned in your EOC and see how dutifully tasked they are and how behind they are on tasks. And so we're going to carry this forward, kind of like Toggle, if you use Toggle, as a philosophically across the city for all tasks going forward, because there's a real power in the city manager being able to look at a chart saying, so you need more tasks in such and such area. And so for the EOC, it works really well, but for normal operations, we're planning on working on using it as well. So kind of fun. Sorry, that's a whirlwind tour, but that's just one example of the kind of mini programs that I've come up with in the last, 12 months working for the city of Ventura.
That's great, Dan. Thanks so much.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you do have that in a version that you're willing to share with the group, we would love to be able to share that as a sample or kind of template for others to use to the full group. So if you wouldn't mind sharing anything on that front that you're open to.
I got to kind of figure out how to package it, because I talked to Microsoft. They are very interested in kind of packaging it as well, but it doesn't. So if you're on Microsoft Teams, I made a cloned version of it that I can basically share a clone with you. And so I can take screenshots of it and talk about how we did it. And most people that have Microsoft Teams could go, oh, okay, I see how that aligns, but I'm still working on that for our EOP. So yes, I can share it, but it doesn't share because it's a virtual member driven thing. It's sort of, I'd have to make you a member. And so, but I will be,
figure something out for sure. I think we are going to stick in kind of this larger group only because we don't have as many people as we do. And I think this is manageable. I did see that Derek Towers had his hand raised. Derek, I want to give you a question or an opportunity to ask a question before we move into further discussion.
I didn't have a question. I was just raising my hand like Dan asked as far as who's familiar with Teams. I'm also
Okay,
very
great.
familiar, fortunately.
Perfect. Then I'll toss back to Melissa.
Yeah, so as Carly mentioned, we usually go into breakouts, but we've got a smaller group than normal today. So I think we'll just stick here and kind of do our discussion at a full group level. So we do have some discussion questions for you all on this topic. So we know that each of your communities is unique and are probably facing different challenges or different threats. A lot of wildfires are happening statewide right now. We definitely see the devastation happening there, but that's not the only thing that you all need to be prepared for in terms of extreme weather events or other challenges. So these are kind of our guiding questions for the day. We're just curious, what are the biggest threats facing your individual communities? Do you already have a plan in place that you're to prepare for and respond to those events, or is that something that you have in the works right now? And then there's the partnership side of things here. So are you currently partnering with any community-based organizations to increase your emergency preparedness? And then what support do you need from the state, from your local government peers or other organizations? And this is something kind of for us at ILG to know too, as we have those connections with state agencies and other local governments and can facilitate some of that peer learning. So we'll just kind of open this up here if anybody wants to jump in. I know it's a little bit more overwhelming in the full group instead of the small breakouts, but Would just love to hear from you all about where you are in this process or what challenges you're facing.
I can say a few things. Okay, from so East Palo Alto, we're on the border with San Mateo County and Santa Clara County, which and our two biggest threats continue to be flooding. Although we completed one segment of a major project on the creek, but there's still flooding in another portion of the city, potential flooding, as well as earthquakes. You know, we're in the Bay Area, although that's probably everywhere, but we're definitely stuck in the middle of several faults. And then even fire more recently, you know, as you know, the fires were right over the mountains and not too far from this area. So I think, you know, we do have a plan. And I don't know if that's the only job you do, Daniel, or are you a full-time just managing that, or you have other jobs? Because I know, you know, we're a small city, so unfortunately we don't have, I wish we did, you know, someone even have time just to be dedicated to that. But we do have, you know, a couple of people assigned that job. And of course the city manager, it does become the manager, but in terms of the preparation and coordination and communication, we do have a couple of people assigned to do that. And there have been some trainings. I would say but I'm gonna look into this tool that you mentioned, Microsoft, to see how we can improve now in the virtual world. We are lucky in one respect, and that is that we're part of a larger fire protection district, and they do have a lot of resources, and they have worked with us. They're on the San Mateo County side, and we also have a CERT group, and I'm actually part of that. And under the pandemic now, I work with other people in my neighborhood on the west side of the freeway to form a community association. And included in that is efforts for us to, you know, train more people, offer training to more people. And I've been pleasantly surprised. In fact, right now, our little group, it's all volunteers, but we have about 35 people who are interested in, you know, helping and receiving some training. So now I just talked to the manager from the fire district to see what, you know, what kinds of little trainings we can do, both in English and in Spanish. We have a large Spanish speaking population. And I think that's something that needs to be improved probably in a lot of places, because in this area, in some ways, one would assume that it's in place, but it's really not in place yet. So that's one area that I have an interest in helping with, to build that capacity, because there are quite a few people, you know, who have expressed an interest here. And that's sort of a new group. But our CERT has been growing under these, you know, conditions, I think, because people are responding to being better prepared, et cetera, et cetera. So we hope that once this pandemic eases and we come back to some other type of normality in person, that there will be a larger number of people that can complement, you know, what the city is doing, right? Because I think especially cities that don't have maybe a lot of resources, and of course now we're being hit even more, that we have to rely on the community more, as well, as long as they're obviously trained and, you know, coordinated and all of that. So yeah, I think in terms of support, that I think that will be something that we, well, you know, frankly, right now I see that the growth in the awareness and the volunteerism in the community in this area is really the most untapped resource, because that goes a long ways. When more people are aware, when more people are ready to help once they take care of their families, but it has to be, you know, coordinated. So And last thing I'll say, because I started out with the 2 counties, I serve on the Creek Joint Powers Authority that deals with flooding, and we sort of instigated the 2 counties sort of getting together, because before there was not a lot of communication. You know, it's like 2 different worlds because they're 2 different counties. And we were saying, you know, the Creek doesn't care what county it is. So finally, we really instigated Palo Alto fire getting together with the other fire. And now there's a much better kind of an updated, and that's why I like that. I think having a regular update of who the people are, who you contact, even among all the first responders. Anyways, that's our little story.
That's really important, Ruben. Dan, I know that you have your hand raised to respond, but we have a lot of communities here with some unique geographies. And so Mammoth Lake, Salinas, SJ-Cog, I'd love to give you guys a chance to jump in if you have something to add before Dan weighs in on what Ruben said.
Yeah, I think, Ruben, you hit on a couple of interesting things there around collaboration amongst different agencies and different types of local governments, and the volunteerism in your community. Are any of our other jurisdictions seeing some of those similar trends, or relying on those types of collaboration or collective impact type models to address some of these things?
And Megan, I may pick on you specifically. I know Salinas was dealing with a lot of wildfire smoke, not necessarily the fires, and you have a large farm worker population. I don't know if there's anything that you might be able to add to, what the city of Salinas thinks about during in regards to emergency preparedness.
No, I mean, I think one challenge that we have is that the county takes the lead on oftentimes on emergency preparedness, and especially I think with the pandemic, and we're not always getting kind of what our expectation is of communication or information and support. So I think what we've kind of discovered is that a lot of it is up to us, and we don't necessarily have the same infrastructure that the counties are. A good example with the wildfires is, public health support. So it's been a challenge for us, I think, on the county city coordination and information getting to us, and then also just feeling like our needs are being addressed effectively.
Gotcha. Thank you. And Kimberly, do you experience similar things in Mammoth Lakes? You're right in the same building as the county, so.
Actually, they've moved. Yeah, they got their own Mona County headquarters in the town. So we are in a little bit of a different location now, but essentially the town of Mammoth Lakes, we have wildfire, extreme weather, including windstorms, snowstorms, and sometimes flooding related to rain on snow events. But essentially what we are experiencing right now with the Creek Fire being so nearby, just having such an overwhelming presence of smoke in the town on certain weeks, or it can be weeks or days. We've got a nice reprieve right now from that, but we do have a pretty good partnership with the Great Basin Unified Air Pollution Control District, and they are really good about posting air quality outlooks and identifying the particulate amount that's in the air, whether we're unhealthy or hazardous air quality. So that's been a really good resource. The town has tapped into that and has a link to that on our website. So we're able to inform people. I get a lot of phone calls from people who want to visit the area and they just want to know what the air quality is like. So I am able to direct them to that resource. On the wildfire front, we do have the sort of difficult I guess, difficult coordination with the Forest Service, although the Forest Service is really good to work with, but we really don't have a lot of control in doing fire prevention work on Forest Service lands. So it's been really important to work with them, and there have been some recent grants that were, the Sierra Nevada Conservancy did award a grant to the Forest Service to do forest thinning for wildfire prevention in our lakes basin. That was a pretty big project. I believe it is not complete yet, but that seemed to take a lot of coordination with the Forest Service, our water district, and the Forest Service even contacted the town to potentially assist with CEQA, since they were really handling the NEPA portion of that project. I didn't assist with that project, but I kind of know on a peripheral basis how that went. And we do get some pushback from the community when there are thinning projects occurring in town, because the trees are sort of our character. We are a forest and we're a community in the trees. So sometimes we do get pushback from the community on those types of projects. But overall, I think from outside organizations, we do have a partnership right now, which I think is going to be starting with the Eastern Sierra Climate and Communities Resilience Project. That's also a grant that was awarded by the Sierra Nevada Conservancy to an outside group. Looks like the Plumas Corporation is heading that up, but that's going to be a large forest thinning project on Forest Service lands, but it's going to incorporate the town as an agency with input in that project and sort of how we can partner with them in moving it forward. So I think that we do have a good amount of outside organizations who are interested in helping the town become more resilient to wildfires. And I don't want to take up too much time, but on other issues that we encounter with wind events and snow events, and we do have our hazard mitigation plan, which we share with Mono County. And the town has recently updated its general plan safety element to incorporate adaptation policies and actions related to snow removal and improving community safety when those sort of extreme events do occur.
That's great. That's great. And I know we're a little bit running behind, but I did want to give Joaquin Cog. I know we have several folks on the call from there. Is there anything you guys wanted to talk about in this section before we move on? I'll take the silence as a no. So I'll turn it back to Melissa.
Well, so we do have plenty of time. So if there's anything that you guys want to share or any questions that you have, feel free to just jump in or raise your hand or chat us to share those thoughts as well. But we also do have some resources that we wanted to share with you all. And we have Derek Dalty from the League of California Cities on the line with us today to share some of the efforts and resources that the League of California Cities has been putting out. So why don't we turn it over to Derek now? He can share some of their advocacy efforts and resources available to you all to help you navigate some of these really, really challenging issues. So Derek?
Can everyone hear me? Melissa, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Derek.
Sorry, I apologize for the background noise, but I'll try and speak loudly. So as Melissa said, my name is Derek Dolphy. I'm the League's Environmental Quality and Community Services Lobbyist. And so the League has really been trying to focus a lot this year on disaster resources for cities. So I've highlighted a few things here, as well as I'll talk about our advocacy efforts and then happy to take questions. The first thing is we did a very in-depth webinar series earlier this year called Wildfires Resources for Cities. I've linked it here, and I believe you guys will be able to have access to these slides at some point. It's on our League website if you go there, and we have, I think, 4 to 6 6 different sessions that we did on all things related to wildfires. So from the what to do before, what to do during, and what to do after, how to do and Cal OES, as well as we actually had a webinar with Cal Fire scheduled that we had to move 3 different times because there's been such wildfire activity this year. So we've had quite a bit of engagement there with different state partners. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. Additionally, back when we could all meet in person, we did a session at this year's City Managers Conference in February related to the utility initiated power shutdowns. So I've linked there as well the materials for that, for how cities can get prepared for the man-made type of disaster where the power companies have to shut off the power due to a high wind or red flag event. So we have that information for you as well. And then of course, for those of you who are, have experienced wildfires, unfortunately, the disaster that usually follows that is mudslide. So right now, we're in the process of developing a webinar to talk about what to do before, how to respond to, and how to recover from a mudslide, particularly after a large wildfire has gone through an area. So that's something that's kind of on our docket for the next few months that we're going to be developing. Additionally, so not only do we have resources, but I, as a lobbyist, have been very active advocating for more resources and tools for cities on this front. So as you can see here, one of our league's strategic priorities this year was to strengthen community and disaster preparedness, public safety, and resiliency.
Derek has temporarily turned into a robot.
So we supported a, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Yep, okay. Sorry.
Oop, you're breaking up again, Derek.
You're glitching out.
Yeah.
A lot of bills in the past, and especially this year, trying to give more resources to, and so a lot of those bills, unfortunately.
This is our Halloween edition.
Did I lose you guys?
Derek turns into a robot.
Did I lose you?
Oh, there he went.
Oh, I think we might have officially lost him.
Well, so hopefully he can reconnect, but in the meantime, we also have some additional resources. Carly sits on the ICARP board, and they have issued, oh, now he's back. Do you have audio, Derek?
Nope, nope, we lost him.
Can you guys hear me? I can hear you.
Okay, you're back.
Okay.
Sorry about all this, folks. I really apologize. Long story short, we're doing a lot of stuff in the legislature as well as resources, and we're happy to be a resource for all of you. So if you have questions, just put them in the chat and I will respond to them. Sorry about all the communication problems.
That's okay, thanks so much.
No problem. I think that's also one of the themes for this year in remote remote working and remote learning and all of the tech difficulties. So we'll share definitely the slide deck with you so you guys have all these links to these the webinars and to the session information and things like that. And then we can get a quick download maybe from Derek to share with you guys in the follow-up email as well. But I think hopefully he can still hear us. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask any questions that you might have around the educational resources or advocacy resources that the league is working on. Carly or Nicole, are we seeing any questions?
I do not.
Okay, well, so thanks, Derek. And if we get any questions, we'll follow up with you after the call as well. So in the same vein, as I just mentioned, so Carly, in her role in the ICARP board, has also seen some resources come through that we wanted to share with you all as well. Carly.
Great, thanks so much. Yes, as as Melissa mentioned, I sit on the Integrated Climate Adaptation and Resilience Program Board. They have an adaptation clearinghouse that has a slew of resources. There's case studies. There's a variety of things. There's the 5th climate assessment as well. And you can access all of those on the ICARP website. I'm not able to bring it up right now. And unfortunately, my children have just walked in from school and are talking to me, so I apologize. Yes, and then there's a bunch of other resources as well. There's some funding resources. And then Melissa, did you want to talk about the upcoming webinar as well?
Well, so you see that listed there on the screen. And again, we'll send this information around to you, so don't try to feel like you have to copy down that URL right now. So we'll send this around as additional resources. And then obviously, Dan earlier mentioned OES, so we have the link there to Cal OES, and they have a number of resources available to you all, as well as Listos from California. So we just recommend that you check out these if you aren't familiar with them already, as another resource for you all as you navigate this. We definitely do still have some time though, so if anybody has any additional questions or comments, either for Dan or for Derek, or just anything else you want to share with us, feel free. We've got another 10 or 15 minutes here.
Go ahead, Dan.
So Ruben asked earlier, and I sent him my contact information. You can certainly circulate my contact information. One of the cities that we did clone our site and shared it with was San Mateo. I have a lot of friends right there across from you, Ruben. And so they may be a good source of information, but I certainly can help you walk through that process as well, as far as Microsoft Teams. I am 100% funded as an emergency manager because a city of 100, we're a charter city of 100,000, and that was a decision city council prioritized. But one of the things that we did successfully that your group might be able to leverage is talent. So when I mean to say talent, during the Thomas Fire, what you didn't see is we borrowed somebody from, I think it was Napa or Sonora or Sonoma, that had just been through a catastrophic fire. And they came down the day after the Thomas Fire. And that behavior didn't come up on record anywhere, but it was very, very useful to have the city manager from that city fly down. And he did it willingly. He called our city manager, say, hey, I just went through this. I know what you need to do. And it was instrumental in our success. And so you won't see that come up in too many places. But I think that the sharing of staff and resources in real time is really critically important. We hear about it in Northern California and you go, oh, okay, that's not us. But as we evolve and train, I think that we should be more and more willing to share resources because we're only as strong as our short-staffed selves. And then the other piece that is really important is the coordination, because you are, as a city, an island almost instantaneously in every scenario. And so the more we can kind of collaborate with staff and share staff, I mean, I'd be willing to go up to Mammoth or any place like that, to go skiing. I mean, to help anytime. So just, feel free to ask. But we should be more and more. And I think that the Institute of Local Government could be instrumental in some of that cross training. We do Emergency Operations Center training and other trainings. There's not really I don't know of a consolidated, hey, come and see. There's X number of slots, but I don't know where that fits. I'm just throwing it out there as an idea. So thank you for involving me.
Yeah, and we're looking into that, Dan. So it's kind of been on our agenda for, unfortunately, 2 years now, and we're just still working. First, it was to get the funding, and then it was to kind of change the way of looking at things just because of COVID and some other things. But I think the person you're referring to is Sean McGlenn from the city of Santa Rosa, and he has toured the entire state. He's gone to Malibu, a couple of the other cities down south as well for their fires. And we were trying to create a toolkit that was really the Save the Sean McGlenn marriage, because he was spending the majority of his time just going around and helping other cities. And so we are still looking into that. So we would love to get your ideas and your needs. The league, actually, we don't have it as a resource, but we'll send it out separately. The law department actually created a big book of various policies that cities should have in place. I know one of our boost cities did not have a work at home policy. So when COVID hit, several of their staff members were out for a couple of weeks while they got that policy in place. And so anything that we can think of that will help, preserve staff time, resources, we want to think about. So, Derek said the webinar series, the before, during, and after, it's always great to have a plan before, but a lot of times after an emergency hits, the during is just chaos, and then the after, everyone is so exhausted that they kind of have a hard time documenting their best practices and lessons learned and keep on going. So we as the Institute are looking to do some of that documentation and best practice sharing. So it's not just done in forums like this or at conference sessions where it's somewhere written down. So, you know, when we have that luxury of time, that we can soak in as much information as we have, so when the emergency hits, we'll at least have a basis of which to start from. And so we still have a couple more minutes. I just want to make sure that everyone got a chance to talk. We do have a smaller group here today, but you know, the richness really is in this back and forth conversation. And again, so happy to have Dan from the city manager's office. We have several council members from the city of East Palo Alto and staff from various other cities. So I'm really excited about the variety of people who joined this webinar today. And I see that Ruben's hand is up. So Ruben.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to thank, you know, Daniel for the sharing, because I do think that the more we share across jurisdictions, particularly if they can be sort of paired up or little cohorts where we share either, I mean, you know, we share similar kinds of, you know, threats, but also, you know, the demographics, the geography, because I think that sometimes you connect better when you have certain similarities in that. So I think that the Institute and other groups, the more you do that, I think that would be very, very helpful. I'll share one small thing that I think in our city around here, we're really the only ones who've done it, and that is the following. In the command group for the city, you know, includes the police chief and, you know, whoever's going to be in charge, let's say. The CERT people in our community, but it's the case in others, sometimes sort of get lost between the fire district people and the local governments. And, you know, so there's different little models. But one of the things that we finally did this past year, and it was all within the purview of the city manager, right? But the city managers agreed to have a person from the CERT team be part of the command group. And the reason is not that they would have, you know, authority, but it improves communication and coordination. Because otherwise you have people who are very active in CERT and something happens and everybody's calling the city to find out. And it becomes, you know, redundant, it becomes conflictive, you know, versus having a person who represents the CERT and then they communicate to everybody else. So, you know, it's at a lower level of linkage, but I have found that that part is one that often creates frustration in the community because there's not as much communication. People want to help, they don't know what to do. And then everything goes back to, you know, to the city government, even though we may not have control over everything, but just the fact that somebody's sitting around the table with you. So, you know, we've had some people who've been very active, and I think that has improved the relationship and the understanding that, you know, you don't need to have 5 people from the CERT calling after something. One person is sitting at the table and they will communicate back, be a link. So I would say that's a little innovation that I've seen that I know the other cities around so far, they haven't done that, but they got their own ways, I guess.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Ruben. And again, we will share all of these resources out with you all of the links and the recording so that you can share this with your colleagues if they weren't able to join, and for the rest of the Boost cohort. We do still have a few minutes, so if you have questions, feel free to continue to put them in the chat. I'm just going to quickly share our contact information here with you all in case you don't have it and you have any questions or follow-up items that you need from any of us on the ILG Boost team. And then we've got a couple Boost Lives left with the year. Next month, we're hoping to focus in after the election. We know this is going to be a huge topic of conversation in probably all of your agencies no matter how things shake out. There'll definitely be transitions happening across the state. And we definitely are seeing issues of civility and things like that. So we're hoping to focus in next month on tips to navigate that transition, the orientation process for new council members or new staff as that may be. And then, yeah, just that touch point of civility for all of us. And then in December, we're hopefully going to pull together a conversation around kind of closing out Boost and hearing from you all how it worked for you, what you really like, what we could improve if we're working with cities and regions in the future, and just kind of do a closeout of the Boost program, sadly, in December. And so that's all we've got for you all today. So unless Carly or any of my Boost colleagues, anybody have any thoughts or comments before we close out?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you all for joining us on this Friday afternoon before Halloween and after a very long month. So thank you all again, and we hope to see you next month on Boost Live.
And a big thank you to Dan and Derek for joining us today and sharing all of their expertise and resources with us as well. And thank you all for joining us. We will see you next month.
Have a great weekend.